Elena Vasquez walked through the shining halls of the Galactic Council station, her footsteps echoing against the crystal walls. The other aliens barely looked at her as she passed. To them, she was just another human, weak, primitive, and barely worth their time. 3 years had passed since Earth made first contact with the galactic community. 3 long years of being treated like children who had just learned to walk. Elena remembered the excitement back home when the first alien ships appeared over Earth. Humanity thought they were joining a family of advanced civilizations. Instead, they found themselves at the bottom of a very tall ladder. The Zephyrians ruled the council with their pale blue skin and elegant robes. They spoke in soft voices, but their words cut deep. The Korvaxi were different, tall, muscular warriors with red scales who preferred to threaten rather than insult. Both species looked down on humans, but in different ways. Elena reached the council chambers and took her seat in the back row. The human section was small, just 3 chairs for the entire species. Most other races had dozens of representatives. The Zephyrians alone filled half the Great Hall with their delegates. High Counselor Velthara stood at the center podium, her voice carrying easily across the chamber. Today we discuss trade routes in the Outer Rim sectors, she announced. All species may bid for shipping contracts except those restricted to inner system routes only. Elena knew what that meant. Humans were banned from the profitable long-distance trade routes. They could only carry cargo between nearby planets, earning just enough to keep their small fleet running. It was another way to keep Earth dependent on the Council's generosity. Ambassador Thekmar of the Korvaxi military stood next. His red scales gleamed under the chamber lights as he spoke. The Korvaxi fleet requires additional supplies for our expansion into the Beta Quadrant. We will need food shipments from agricultural worlds. Elena listened carefully as the Korvaxi listed their demands: more grain from the farming planets, more protein from the livestock worlds, more everything to feed their growing military. The other species nodded and agreed to provide what they could. What about Earth? Thekmar asked, his yellow eyes finding Elena in the back row. Surely the humans can contribute to this important military operation? Velthara checked her datapad with graceful movements. Earth produces adequate food for a world of their development level. Perhaps they could spare 10% of their agricultural output. Elena stood slowly, knowing every eye in the chamber would turn to her. Earth would be honored to contribute to the Council's needs, she said in her most respectful voice. We can provide 10% as suggested. Thekmar's mouth twisted into what might have been a smile on his alien face. 10% seems modest for such an important cause. Perhaps 20% would show more commitment to galactic unity. The other delegates murmured agreement. Elena felt the familiar weight of their expectations pressing down on her. This was how it always went. They would ask for more and more until Earth had nothing left to give. 20% would strain our resources, Elena replied carefully. But if the Council believes it necessary, we will find a way. Good, Velthara said with satisfaction. It pleases us to see humanity taking their responsibilities seriously. After the session ended, Elena walked through the station's commercial district. Alien merchants sold advanced technology that humans could only dream of owning. Energy shields, faster-than-light communicators, gravity manipulators, all forbidden to Earth under various trade restrictions. She stopped at a Zephyrian technology stall, pretending to admire a small device that could power an entire city. The merchant, a young Zephyrian with silver markings on his blue skin, barely glanced at her. "Can I help you?" he asked in a bored tone. "This power cell is beautiful," Elena said, picking up the device. "How does it work?" The merchant laughed. "Far too complex for human understanding. Perhaps you would prefer something more suitable. We have some basic battery packs that might meet your needs." Elena smiled and nodded, placing the power cell back on the display. But her fingers had already scanned it with the tiny device hidden in her palm. Another piece of alien technology recorded and analyzed, another step forward in Project Prometheus. She continued her walk, stopping at several more stalls. Each time she played the part of the curious but primitive human. Each time the alien merchants dismissed her as harmless. Each time, her hidden scanners gathered more data. Back in her quarters aboard the human transport ship, Elena activated her secure communication system. The encryption was her own design, using mathematics that the Council believed humans hadn't discovered yet. She was wrong about many things. Report, came the voice from Earth. Admiral Sarah Chen appeared on the screen, her weathered face serious as always. The Korvaxi are demanding 20% of our food production, Elena said. Velthara approved it in session today. 20%, Chen repeated. They're getting bolder, or more desperate. Their expansion into Beta Quadrant isn't going as planned. Intelligence suggests they've lost 3 colonies to local resistance. Chen nodded. What about the technology gathering? Elena held up her scanner. 17 new devices today, including a Zephyrian power cell and a Korvaxi communications array. The engineering teams will be busy. Good, how much longer do you think we have? Elena considered the question carefully. For 3 years she had watched the Council's treatment of humanity grow worse. Each session brought new restrictions, new demands, new insults disguised as policy. The aliens saw humans as useful servants, nothing more. 6 months, maybe less, she said finally. They're preparing something big. Thekmar mentioned expansion, but his military buildup suggests they're planning more than just colonization. We'll be ready, Chen promised. Prometheus is ahead of schedule. The asteroid shipyards are producing faster than expected, and Mars base just completed another weapons test. Elena smiled, but it wasn't the pleasant expression she wore in council chambers. This smile had teeth. What about the infiltration program? Phase 2 is already in motion. Our people are in position across 12 sectors. When the time comes, we'll know everything they're planning before they do. The conversation ended and Elena prepared for sleep. Tomorrow would bring another day of playing the weak human ambassador. Another day of bowing and scraping before aliens who thought they owned the galaxy. Another day of letting them believe humanity was helpless. But in the hidden facilities scattered throughout the Sol system, human engineers were busy. They took apart alien technology and built it better. They studied alien tactics and found their weaknesses. They prepared for a war that the Council didn't even know was coming. Elena had learned many things during her time at the Council Station. She learned that the Zephyrians were arrogant and believed their own propaganda about superior intelligence. She learned that the Korvaxi were aggressive but predictable in their strategies. Most importantly, she learned that both species had a fatal flaw. They underestimated their enemies. Humanity had been underestimated before. When the aliens arrived at Earth, they expected to find primitive savages wielding stone tools. Instead, they found a species that had already split the atom and reached their own moon. The Council decided that humans were simply lucky, not actually intelligent. They were about to discover just how wrong they could be. As Elena drifted off to sleep, she thought about Earth, about the blue oceans and green continents that the aliens wanted to turn into one giant farm, about the billions of humans who deserved better than servitude to alien masters. Soon, she promised herself, very soon, the galaxy would learn what happened when you cornered a predator and mistook its patience for weakness. The Council thought they were dealing with sheep. They were about to meet the wolves. 6 months later, Elena sat in the Council chambers watching the greatest insult in human history unfold before her eyes. The morning had started like any other session, with routine reports and minor trade disputes. Then High Counselor Velthara had stood with a special announcement that changed everything. The Council has reached a momentous decision regarding the human species, Velthara declared, her elegant voice carrying across the silent chamber. After careful consideration of their progress and potential, we have decided to grant humanity a great honor. Elena kept her face perfectly neutral, though her heart was racing. Around the chamber, hundreds of alien delegates leaned forward with interest. The Korvaxi delegation looked particularly pleased with themselves. Humanity will be elevated to full servitude status, Velthara continued. This is an extraordinary privilege for such a young species. Very few races have been granted this opportunity so early in their galactic membership. The chamber erupted in polite applause. Elena heard the word servitude echo in her mind like a death sentence. Not partnership. Not alliance. Servitude. The Council was officially declaring humanity to be slaves. Ambassador Thekmar rose from his seat, his red scales catching the light. The Korvaxi military is prepared to assist with this transition. We have identified several agricultural worlds where the human population can be relocated for maximum efficiency. Relocated, Elena thought. They were talking about moving every human off Earth, taking away their home planet and spreading them across alien worlds where they could be better controlled. The Humans have proven themselves capable farmers, added Counselor Jektar of the insectoid Vexani. Their primitive methods are actually quite effective for basic food production. With proper supervision, they could feed entire sectors. More applause filled the chamber. Elena listened to them discuss humanity's future like they were planning the management of livestock. Some delegates suggested genetic modifications to make humans better workers. Others proposed educational programs to eliminate dangerous concepts like independence and self-determination. Through it all, Elena sat quietly in the back row. The other council members had probably forgotten she was even there. They certainly weren't concerned about her opinion on humanity's enslavement. Finally, Velthara called for the formal vote. All in favor of Resolution 2847, granting humanity servitude status and authorizing relocation to designated agricultural worlds. Elena watched as hand after hand, claw after claw, and tentacle after tentacle rose in support. The vote wasn't even close. Out of 847 council members, only 12 voted against the resolution. Most of those 12 were from species that the council also considered lesser races. The resolution passes, Velthara announced with satisfaction. Implementation will begin immediately. Human Ambassador Vasquez, please approach the podium. Elena stood slowly and walked down the long aisle to the center of the chamber. Every alien eye was on her now. She could feel their mixture of pity and amusement. Poor little human, they were thinking. She probably doesn't even understand what just happened. Ambassador Vasquez, Velthara said in a gentle tone, like she was speaking to a child. The council knows this news may be difficult for your people to understand. But this is truly a wonderful opportunity for humanity. You will be cared for, protected, and given meaningful work to do. Elena looked up at the High Counselor's blue face, seeing the false kindness there. What if humanity refuses this honor? Several delegates laughed out loud. Thekmar's laugh was the loudest, a harsh sound that echoed through the chamber. Refuses? He repeated. My dear Ambassador, this is not a request. The council has made its decision. But surely, Elena said, keeping her voice meek and confused, there must be some way for humanity to prove we deserve better treatment, some test or challenge we could undertake. The laughter grew louder. Even Velthara's composed expression cracked into a small smile. Ambassador, your species has had 3 years to prove themselves. The results speak for themselves. Humans are simply not equipped for the responsibilities of full galactic citizenship. Elena bowed her head as if accepting defeat. Then she looked up with what appeared to be desperate hope. The ancient laws mention a right of challenge. Could humanity invoke that tradition? The chamber fell silent. The right of challenge was an old law, dating back to the Council's founding. It allowed any member species to demand satisfaction for grievances through trial by combat. It hadn't been used in over 200 years. Thekmar stood again, his warrior instincts engaged. You wish to challenge the Council's decision through combat? His voice held barely controlled excitement. If that is humanity's only option, Elena replied. Velthara consulted with the other senior counselors through quick, whispered conversations. Finally, she nodded. Very well. The right of challenge is yours by law. However, you must understand the terms. If humanity loses, you accept servitude status without any further resistance. No appeals, no negotiations, no complaints. And if we win? Elena asked. You won't, Thekmar interrupted. But if by some miracle you do, the resolution would be overturned and humanity would gain full council membership with all privileges. Elena appeared to consider this carefully. Around the chamber she could see aliens exchanging amused glances. The idea of primitive humans defeating anyone in combat was obviously ridiculous to them. What would be the nature of this combat? She asked. Thekmar's eyes gleamed with anticipation. Fleet action. Your ships against mine. We will give you 1 standard galactic year to prepare. The Council is not unreasonable. The battle will take place at the edge of your solar system, where your home fleet has tactical advantage. 1 year, Elena repeated slowly. 1 year, Thekmar confirmed. Though I suggest you spend that time preparing your people for relocation instead. The Korvaxi Third Fleet has never lost a battle. We have 500 warships under my command, each one more advanced than anything in your primitive fleet. Elena looked around the chamber one final time. Every face showed the same expression, pity mixed with amusement. They were giving humanity a chance to die with dignity instead of simply surrendering. How generous of them. Very well, she said quietly. Humanity accepts the right of challenge. 1 year from today at the edge of Sol system. The chamber erupted in excited chatter. This would be the entertainment event of the decade. Primitive humans against the mighty Korvaxi fleet. Some delegates were already making bets on how quickly the battle would end. Velthera called for order. The challenge is accepted and recorded. Admiral Thekmar, you may begin preparations immediately. Ambassador Vasquez, you have 1 standard year. We suggest you use the time wisely. Elena bowed deeply to the council, playing her part to the end. Thank you for this opportunity. Humanity will not forget the council's generosity. As she walked back up the aisle toward the exit, she heard Thekmar addressing the chamber. I promise the council an entertaining battle. My ships will make it last long enough to be interesting, but not so long as to be boring. More laughter followed Elena out of the chamber. In the corridors beyond, alien reporters were already preparing their coverage of the upcoming Battle of Sol. Most were treating it as a comedy rather than a serious military engagement. Elena made her way back to her quarters, maintaining her defeated expression until the door sealed behind her. Only then did she allow herself to smile. Not the polite diplomatic smile she wore in public, but something much more dangerous. She activated her communication system and sent a single coded message to Earth. The harvest begins now. 3 years of patience were about to pay off. 3 years of being underestimated, insulted, and dismissed. The council thought they were about to watch a one-sided slaughter. They had no idea they were about to become the main course. Elena looked out her window at the stars, thinking about Admiral Sarah Chen and the thousands of humans working in secret across the solar system. The council wanted a battle. They would get one. But it wouldn't be the kind of battle they were expecting. 1 year to prepare, Thekmar had said. The poor fool had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this moment since the day they learned they weren't alone in the universe. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when you gave a predator time to plan. Deep inside Ceres asteroid, Admiral Sarah Chen stood before a massive holographic display showing the Sol system. What the Galactic Council saw as empty space was actually humanity's greatest secret. Hidden facilities dotted every major asteroid, moon, and planet in the system. Status report, Chen ordered, her voice echoing through the command center carved from solid rock. Asteroid belt shipyards are at full production, reported Commander Martinez from the tactical station. We now have 2,147 operational vessels with 200 more rolling off the assembly lines each day. Chen nodded with satisfaction. When the council looked at human space, they saw Earth's small defensive fleet of maybe 50 ships. They had no idea that humanity had been building a true war fleet in the asteroid belt, using materials and techniques that should have been impossible for such a primitive species. Mars base status? She asked. All weapon systems online and tested, came the reply from another officer. The gravity lance performed perfectly in yesterday's trial. We can crack a moon in half from 3 light minutes away. The gravity lance was Chen's favorite new toy. Human scientists had taken Zephyrian gravitational technology and weaponized it in ways the peaceful council species had never imagined. Instead of using gravity to move cargo, humans used it to crush enemy ships into tiny balls of metal. What about our infiltration teams? Intelligence Officer Park stepped forward with her report. Phase 2 is complete across all target sectors. We have sleeper agents in position at every major council military base, supply depot, and communication hub. They're ready to activate on your signal. Chen smiled coldly. For 3 years, humans had played the role of grateful junior partners, accepting any job the council offered. What the aliens didn't realize was that these jobs had placed humans throughout their territory. Human engineers maintained their power plants. Human technicians serviced their computers. Human workers loaded their supply ships. Every single one of those humans was actually a trained saboteur waiting for orders. Show me the Korvaxi fleet positions, Chen commanded. The holographic display shifted to show Admiral Thekmar's third fleet. 500 massive warships hung in space near the edge of the Sol system, their red hulls gleaming with weapon arrays. Each ship was 3 times larger than anything in Earth's official fleet. Impressive, Chen admitted, if we were fighting by their rules. But humans didn't fight by alien rules. While the Council preferred large, heavily armed ships that fought in organized formations, humanity had developed something entirely different. Smaller, faster vessels that struck from unexpected angles. Stealth technology that made ships invisible to Council sensors. Drone swarms that fought with computer precision instead of biological emotion. Analysis of their formation? Chen asked. Textbook Corvaxi battle doctrine, replied Commander Martinez. Heavy ships in the center, fast attack vessels on the flanks, command ships safely in the rear. They're expecting us to charge straight at them like proper warriors. Chen laughed. Proper warriors. The Corvaxi had spent centuries fighting enemies who followed the same basic rules of engagement. Honorable combat between matched opponents, warnings before attacks, chances for surrender. Rules that made war into a kind of deadly sport. Humans had no interest in playing sports. They were interested in winning. Time until battle? Chen asked. 8 days, Admiral. Thekmar's fleet arrived early. He's probably hoping to psychologically intimidate us by making us stare at his ships for a week. Good. Let him sit there and get overconfident. Have all our ships moved into final positions? Yes, Admiral. Every vessel is exactly where it needs to be. Chen walked over to another display showing the real human fleet. Unlike the Corvaxi ships, human vessels were scattered throughout the system in seemingly random positions. Some hid behind asteroids. Others drifted disguised as space debris. Many more waited in hyperspace, ready to jump into the battle at precisely the right moment. The largest concentration of human ships wasn't even in the Sol system. They were hiding in deep space, waiting for Phase 3 of the operation to begin, because the Battle of Sol was only the opening move in humanity's plan. Status of the Council monitoring teams? Chen asked. 12 observation ships from various species are in position to broadcast the battle live across the galaxy, reported Park. They have no idea what they're about to witness. Perfect. Chen wanted the entire galaxy to see what happened when humans stopped pretending to be harmless. Every alien species watching would get the same message. This is what we do to bullies. A communication alert chimed, and Elena Vasquez appeared on the main screen. She was still aboard the Council station, maintaining her cover as Earth's diplomatic representative. Admiral, Elena said formally, I wanted to report that Thekmar is growing impatient. He's demanding that we bring our fleet forward for inspection before the battle. What did you tell him? That human tradition requires our warriors to meditate in private before combat. He found that amusing, Chen could imagine. The Corvaxi probably thought humans were praying to their primitive gods for a quick death. They had no idea that human meditation involved final systems checks on the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. Any last-minute intelligence from the Council? Chen asked. Nothing unexpected. They're treating this as entertainment. Several species have sent delegations just to watch the battle. Food vendors are setting up viewing parties. Food vendors. The aliens were so confident in the outcome that they were turning humanity's destruction into a social event. Chen filed that information away for later. After the battle, she would remember which species had cheered for human deaths. 8 days, Elena, are you ready? Elena's diplomatic mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the predator underneath. I've been ready for 3 years. It will be satisfying to finally drop the act. The communication ended and Chen returned her attention to the tactical displays. Around her, hundreds of human officers worked at their stations preparing for the most important battle in their species' history. These weren't the primitive savages the Council expected. They were the products of Earth's best military academies, trained in tactics that no alien had ever seen. Admiral, called Lieutenant Kim from the sensor station. We're detecting movement in the Corvaxi fleet. Looks like they're running combat drills. Chen watched the alien ships move through their formations with practiced precision. Beautiful, really. Perfect textbook maneuvers executed with military efficiency. The Corvaxi were good at what they did. Unfortunately for them, what they did was completely predictable. How many different battle formations are they practicing? Chen asked. 7 so far, all standard Council doctrine. They're probably trying to decide which one will look most impressive for the cameras. Chen shook her head in amazement. Even now the Corvaxi were thinking about appearances rather than victory. They wanted to put on a good show for the watching galaxy. They wanted their triumph over humanity to be memorable and dramatic. Chen was happy to make it memorable. Just not in the way they expected. Final weapons check, she ordered. I want every system tested one more time. The command center buzzed with activity as her officers ran through their checklists. Gravity lances charged and ready. Kinetic bombardment platforms loaded with tungsten rods. Stealth missile launchers hidden throughout the asteroid belt. drone control systems synchronized across the fleet, and behind it all, the master plan that would bring down more than just the Korvaxi Third Fleet. Phase 3 would begin the moment Thekmar's ships were destroyed. Human sleeper agents across Council space would activate simultaneously, crippling alien infrastructure and military capabilities. The galaxy thought they were about to watch a primitive species die bravely. Instead, they were about to witness the birth of humanity as a galactic superpower. "Admiral," called Commander Martinez. "Message coming in from Earth." The display showed President Harrison in the Oval Office, flanked by the Joint Chiefs of Staff. "Admiral Chen, you have Earth's full authorization to proceed with Operation Prometheus. Show them what humans are really capable of." "Understood, Mr. President. We won't disappoint you." Chen looked around the command center one final time. Her officers were ready. Her ships were ready. Her weapons were ready. 3 years of preparation were about to be tested in the crucible of actual combat. But Chen wasn't worried. She had studied every aspect of Korvaxi military doctrine. She knew their strengths, their weaknesses, their preferred tactics, and their psychological profiles. The Korvaxi were excellent warriors when fighting other warriors. They had no idea how to fight humans. Admiral Thekmar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the mighty dreadnought Blood of Victory, watching the empty space where the human fleet should be. According to his sensors, there was nothing out there except asteroids and cosmic dust. The primitive humans were probably hiding behind their home planet, too terrified to show themselves. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "the Council observation ships are in position. The galaxy is watching." Thekmar straightened his red-scaled shoulders with pride. Today would be remembered as the day the Korvaxi Third Fleet crushed humanity's pathetic resistance. His victory would be broadcast to every corner of Council space, cementing his reputation as the greatest military commander of his generation. "Begin the attack approach," he ordered. "Signal the human fleet to show themselves for honorable combat." His communications officer sent the traditional challenge across all frequencies. "Human vessels, by order of Admiral Thekmar, present yourselves for battle. Face your defeat with the dignity your species deserves." The response came immediately, broadcast from somewhere near Earth. Admiral Chen's voice was calm and professional. "Thank you for coming to us, Admiral. You've just made this much easier." Thekmar frowned. That didn't sound like the plea for mercy he had expected. "Scan for their ships," he commanded. "They must be hiding behind their planet." "Sir, our sensors show only empty space." "Wait." The tactical officer's voice rose in confusion. "Sir, I'm detecting massive energy readings throughout the system. Something's happening." Across Thekmar's fleet, proximity alarms began screaming. On every sensor display, red contacts appeared as if materializing from nothing. Hundreds of ships, then thousands, decloaking simultaneously around the Korvaxi formation. "Impossible," Thekmar breathed. His tactical display showed human vessels emerging from behind asteroids, rising from planetary shadows, and dropping out of hyperspace in perfect coordination. The enemy fleet was 3 times larger than his own, and they had appeared without warning. "Sir, we're completely surrounded," his tactical officer reported with barely controlled panic. "They have us in a perfect kill box." Before Thekmar could respond, the human attack began. It wasn't the charge of honorable warriors he had expected. Instead, precise strikes hit his command ship simultaneously. Strange blue beams, unlike any weapon in Council databases, tore through Korvaxi's shields as if they weren't there. "Return fire," Thekmar roared. "All ships engage the enemy." His fleet tried to respond, but their communications were already failing. The first wave of human attacks had targeted command and control systems with surgical precision. Ship after ship reported that their targeting computers were offline, their sensors were jammed, their weapons were malfunctioning. "How are they jamming us?" Thekmar demanded. "Our communication systems are hardened against electronic warfare." "Unknown, sir. It's like they know exactly how our systems work." They did know. 3 years of humans working as technicians throughout Council space had given them complete knowledge of alien technology. Every weakness, every vulnerability, every backdoor in alien computer systems. The second wave of human attacks was even more devastating. Kinetic weapons, simple tungsten rods accelerated to incredible speeds, punched through the hulls of Korvaxi ships like paper. No energy shields, no armor plating, no defensive systems could stop chunks of metal moving at relativistic speeds. Sir, the Crimson Blade is gone. The war's end is breaking apart. Sir, we're losing ships faster than we can count them. Thekmar watched in horror as his mighty fleet was systematically destroyed. The humans weren't fighting like proper warriors. They showed no mercy, gave no warnings, accepted no surrenders. Ship after ship exploded under the relentless human assault. Signal surrender, he ordered desperately. Offer terms for honorable defeat. Sir, they're ignoring our surrender signals. They're not responding to any communication attempts. On the observation screens, Council representatives watched in stunned silence as the most powerful fleet in Korvaxi space was torn apart in minutes. This wasn't a battle. It was an execution. Admiral Chen's voice echoed across all frequencies, cold and professional. For 3 years, you treated humanity as children. Today, you learn what human children do to bullies. Thekmar felt ice in his veins as he realized the truth. The humans hadn't just been hiding, they had been planning. Every insult, every restriction, every moment of condescension had been carefully noted and filed away. This wasn't random violence. This was calculated revenge. Sir, gravity readings are off the charts. Something's targeting our flagship. Thekmar looked up to see a human vessel, sleek and deadly compared to his massive dreadnought, pointing some kind of weapon array at his ship. Blue energy gathered around the strange device, and space itself seemed to bend and twist. The gravity lance fired, and the blood of victory, pride of the Korvaxi fleet, was crushed like an empty can. Metal screamed as the ship folded in on itself, compressed by forces that no armor could resist. Thekmar had just enough time to understand that he had been completely outmatched before his ship became a tiny ball of twisted metal. The battle lasted exactly 37 minutes. When it ended, the Korvaxi Third Fleet had been completely destroyed. Not a single human ship had been lost, but the battle was only the beginning. Across Council space, human sleeper agents activated simultaneously. On Zephyrian Prime, the planetary power grid went dark as human technicians triggered cascading failures. On Korvaxi military bases, weapons systems turned on their own operators. Throughout the outer sectors, supply ships carrying human crews changed course and disappeared into hyperspace. The carefully maintained infrastructure that held the Council together began falling apart all at once. Communication networks failed. Trade routes collapsed. Military fleets found themselves stranded without fuel or supplies. Elena Vasquez sat in the Council chambers, no longer hiding her satisfaction, as panicked reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Around her, alien delegates shouted questions and demands that no one could answer. "What's happening?" Belthara demanded, her usual composure cracking. "How are humans everywhere at once?" Elena stood slowly, and her presence somehow commanded attention even in the chaos. When she spoke, her voice carried easily through the chamber, not the meek tone of a junior ambassador, but the authority of someone who held real power. "High Counselor," Elena said with false politeness. "I should probably introduce myself properly. I'm not actually Earth's ambassador to the Council. I'm Director of Strategic Operations for the human government." The chamber fell silent as the implications hit them. For 3 years they had been speaking to humanity's spy master, not their diplomat. "You wanted to make us servants," Elena continued, her voice growing harder. "Instead, you taught us exactly how your civilization works, and how easily it can be broken." The holographic displays around the chamber lit up with reports from human operations across Council space. Critical infrastructure failing. Military communications offline. Food distribution networks collapsing. The systematic dismantling of galactic civilization by an enemy the Council had never seen coming. "Impossible," Belthara whispered. "You're primitives. You barely understand basic technology." Elena smiled, and there was nothing diplomatic about it. "We understand it well enough to turn it against you. Did you really think we spent 3 years bowing and scraping without learning anything? Every system you showed us, every network you let us access, every weakness you revealed, we cataloged all of it." Panic spread through the chamber as the delegates realized the scope of humanity's infiltration. How many humans were there throughout Council space? How long had they been planning this? How had an entire species managed to hide their true capabilities for so long? "What do you want?" Belthara asked, her voice small and frightened. Elena's smile widened. What we've always wanted, respect. But since you're incapable of giving that freely, we'll take it by force. The reports kept coming in. Alien fleets trapped by sabotaged supply lines, communication networks under human control, entire star systems going dark as their infrastructure failed. The Council was learning that they had built their civilization on a foundation of alien labor, and all of that labor had just turned against them. The old galactic order is finished, Elena announced to the shocked chamber. Humanity is offering new terms for galactic civilization. You can accept them, or you can watch your entire society collapse around you. She activated a holographic projector showing the human demands. The caste system would be abolished. All species would have equal representation in a new galactic government. The trade restrictions that kept lesser species in poverty would be eliminated, and humanity would hold a special position in this new order, not as servants but as protectors of species' rights. You have 24 hours to decide, Elena said. Accept our terms or we continue dismantling your civilization piece by piece until there's nothing left but ruins. As she walked out of the chamber, Elena could hear the panicked discussions beginning behind her. Some delegates wanted to fight. Others wanted to negotiate. Most just wanted to know how their mighty galactic civilization had been brought to its knees by a species they had considered barely sentient. Elena didn't care about their discussions. The choice was simple. Accept humanity's terms, or watch everything they had built bone month after the Battle of Sol. Elena walked through the corridors of the council station with a very different feeling than before. Alien delegates who once ignored her now stepped aside quickly when they saw her coming. Some even bowed their heads in fearful respect. The station itself showed signs of the new reality. Human security teams patrolled the halls alongside alien guards. Human technicians worked openly on the computer systems they had once secretly sabotaged. Most tellingly, human warships surrounded the station in a protective formation that looked more like a siege. Elena entered the council chambers and took her new seat at the center of the room. The human delegation now occupied the prime positions that had once belonged to the Zephyrians and Korvaxi. The old seating arrangement had been one of the first things to change under the new galactic order. High Counselor Velthera, now simply Counselor Velthera since the council had been restructured, stood at her podium looking older and more tired than before. The arrogant confidence that had once defined her was gone, replaced by careful wariness. Today's session will address the relief efforts in the Korvaxi sectors, Velthera announced. Director Vasquez will present the human assessment. Elena stood and activated the holographic displays around the chamber. The images showed Korvaxi worlds struggling with basic needs after their military infrastructure collapsed. Food shortages, power failures, communication breakdowns, the price of building a civilization around military expansion instead of sustainable development. The situation in former Korvaxi space remains critical, Elena reported. Their military-focused economy cannot function without the tribute system that supported it. However, human relief operations are making progress. The images changed to show human ships delivering supplies to Korvaxi colonies, food, medicine, repair equipment, everything needed to rebuild a functioning society. But this wasn't charity. It was a demonstration of power. We estimate full economic recovery will take 18 months, Elena continued, provided the new government structure is fully implemented and accepted. Several Korvaxi delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The new government structure meant abandoning their military hierarchy in favor of civilian leadership. For a warrior culture, it was a humiliating change. Former Admiral Vexathul, now reduced to civilian status, raised his hand for permission to speak. Director Vasquez, the Korvaxi people appreciate human assistance, but our traditional governance methods have served us well for centuries. Elena fixed him with a steady stare. Your traditional methods led to the complete destruction of your third fleet, and the collapse of your economy in under 48 hours. Perhaps it's time to try something different. Vexthul's scales flushed darker red with anger, but he said nothing more. Everyone in the chamber remembered what happened to species that challenged humanity's new position. The Korvaxi military was gone. Their infrastructure was dependent on human support. Their very survival relied on human generosity. Counselor Jektar of the Vexani spoke next, her insectoid voice clicking nervously. What of the Outer Rim territories that declared independence during the chaos? Several worlds have refused to recognize the new council's authority. Elena nodded. Those situations are being handled. Admiral Chen's fleet is conducting humanitarian missions to ensure all worlds have access to proper governance. The euphemism fooled no one. Admiral Chen's humanitarian missions involved arriving at rebellious worlds with overwhelming force and offering them a simple choice: join the new order or be reduced to Stone Age technology. So far, every world had chosen to join. The restructuring process is ahead of schedule. Elena continued. 43 former caste worlds have established new democratic governments. Trade restrictions have been eliminated on 27 systems. Agricultural worlds are transitioning from tribute-based economy to fair market systems. Each achievement represented the complete overturning of council traditions that had lasted for millennia. The caste system that had defined galactic civilization was being systematically dismantled and replaced with human concepts of equality and representative government. Velthara cleared her throat nervously. Director, some of our member species have expressed concerns about the pace of these changes. Perhaps a more gradual transition might be advisable. Elena's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Counselor Velthara, are you suggesting that humanity is being too hasty in eliminating slavery and oppression? No, of course not. Velthara backtracked quickly. I merely meant that some species might need more time to adjust to new concepts of governance. They'll adjust, Elena said with finality. The alternative is having no governance at all. The threat was clear. Humanity had proven it could destroy galactic civilization in a matter of days. Rebuilding it according to human principles was an act of mercy, not weakness. A communication alert chimed, and Admiral Chen appeared on the main display from her flagship. Director, I wanted to report that the Zephyrian Prime situation has been resolved. Elena nodded. Thank you, Admiral. Please brief the Council. Chen's weathered face showed no emotion as she delivered her report. 3 Zephyrian colonies attempted to re-establish the old caste system on their worlds. They were using enslaved populations from lesser species for agricultural labor. The chamber was completely silent. Everyone knew what came next. Human intervention teams arrived this morning, Chen continued. The enslaved populations have been liberated. The colonial governors have been arrested for crimes against sentient beings. Democratic elections will be held within 30 days. What of resistance? Asked one of the remaining Zephyrian delegates. Chen's smile was cold. There was no resistance. The colonial militia surrendered immediately when they saw our ships. It seems our reputation precedes us. Elena thanked the Admiral and closed the communication link. Around the chamber, delegates exchanged nervous glances. The message was clear. Any attempt to return to the old ways would be met with swift and overwhelming force. Are there any other concerns? Elena asked the assembly. Silence stretched for long minutes. Finally, a delegate from the Altharian Republic spoke up. Director, my people want to express their gratitude for human intervention in our sector. The liberation of our mining colonies has saved millions of lives. Elena nodded acknowledgement. The Altharians had been one of the lesser species under the old system, forced to provide raw materials to more powerful civilizations. Now they were free to develop their own economy and technology. The new trade agreements are working well. The Altharian continued. Our productivity has increased 40% since we began keeping the profits from our own labor. That's the point, Elena replied. When species are allowed to prosper instead of being exploited, everyone benefits. More delegates began speaking up, many from species that had been oppressed under the old council system. They told stories of worlds where education was no longer restricted by caste, of economies growing without the burden of tribute payments, of young aliens learning about concepts like freedom and equality for the first time. But Elena could also see the resentment in other faces. The former ruling species, Zephyrians, Korvaxi, and their allies, watched their ancient privileges disappear. They had to sit quietly and listen to their former slaves thank humanity for liberation. As the session ended, Elena gathered her materials and prepared to leave. But Velthara approached her privately, her blue face troubled. Director, the former High Counselor said quietly, may I ask you something in confidence? Elena studied the alien's expression. What is it, Counselor? How long had your species been planning this? The level of infiltration, the coordination, the technology, this wasn't something you developed in 3 years. Elena considered the question carefully. We began preparing the day we learned we weren't alone in the universe. The moment our first probe detected alien signals, human leaders started asking 2 questions. How can we learn from them, and how can we protect ourselves from them? Velthara's eyes widened. You've been preparing for war since before first contact? We've been preparing for survival, Elena corrected. We knew that meeting advanced aliens would either be the best thing or the worst thing that ever happened to humanity. We prepared for both possibilities, but you seemed so primitive, so eager to please. Elena's smile was sharp. We were eager to learn. Every insult you gave us, every restriction you placed on us, every moment of condescension, we studied all of it. We learned how your society worked, how your technology functioned, how your minds operated, and we prepared accordingly. Velthara was quiet for a long moment. What happens now? Will humanity rule the galaxy as we once did? No, Elena said firmly. We learned from your mistakes. Oppression breeds rebellion, as you discovered. We're not interested in ruling over anyone. We're interested in making sure no one rules over us. She moved toward the exit, then paused and looked back. The galaxy is better now than it was under your counsel, Velthara. Billions of beings are free who were once enslaved. Entire species can now reach their potential instead of being held back by artificial restrictions. That's not conquest, that's liberati.